In 1878, the members of the St Domingo's Methodist Chapel in the north of Liverpool formed a football team. It proved a very successful venture and players joined in from beyond the parish boundaries, prompting a change of name in 1879 to Everton. Early games were played in Stanley Park, Priory Road and Downfield before a permanent switch to Goodison Park in 1892. By then, Everton had already won the league championship in 1891, just 3 years after being founder members of the Football League. This image is a famous one in Everton's history. It depicts the winning goal in the 1906 FA Cup final, Sander Young's effort against Newcastle United bringing the famous trophy to Everton for the very first time. It was 1915 before the championship was lifted again, but the outbreak of the First World War prevented further progress, and it wasn't until this man arrived that Everton became a force once again. William Ralph Dean was known simply as Dixie, and he became the greatest centre-forward the game has ever known. Everton won the title in 1928 during a season in which Dean scored a record 60 league goals. Incredibly, relegation was suffered just 3 years later, but Everton bounced back to rise again. The second division crown in 1931 was followed by the championship again in 1932, and then the FA Cup at Wembley in 1933.
His wonderful kick presents Dixie Dean with a chance in the goal mouth, which he doesn't miss this time. Head of the second division 1931, first league champions 1932, cup winners 1933. What a record! Well played, Everton.
Tommy Lawton eventually succeeded Dean at centre-forward, and his goals helped secure the 1939 title. Lawton was poised to become an Everton legend, but once again war got in the way, and by the time hostilities ceased, Lawton had moved on, and Everton entered a period of mediocrity. Relegation to the second division was suffered again in 1951, and this time it was 3 years before Dave Hickson blasted the goals that earned promotion back to the top flight. It was the appointment of former player Harry Catterick in 1961 that proved inspirational and was certainly the catalyst for a golden age. Known as the School of Science, Everton stormed to the 1963 league title in magnificent style, and 3 years later one of Wembley's most dramatic cup finals ever brought the FA Cup back to Goodison for a third time. Everton trailed 2-0 against Sheffield Wednesday but fought back to win.
Not even a cup final can prevent the Goodison Park spirit invading Wembley. That Bobby ought to be playing at Twickenham. It was the sort of final the fans dream about, but don't often see. Goals in plenty, and the most dramatic second half seen for years. Everton put every ounce they had into a winning effort. They were twice the team they'd been in the first half. That speedy left winger, Derek Temple, had a great chance and made no mistake. Victory to Everton and the cup, presented by Princess Margaret. What more fitting now than the roar of Wembley to end this day?
Catterick had the right formula, and he found it again in 1970 when, inspired by the midfield trio of Kendall, Harvey and Ball, Everton swept them all aside to regain the First Division crown with the brand of football still talked about today. The supporters sat back and eagerly awaited English football domination in the 70s, but it just didn't happen, and it was the city rivals from across the park who moved into pole position. Subsequent managers tried and failed to recreate the glory years, and it was another ex-player, Howard Kendall, who finally managed it. An FA Cup win in 1984 was followed by the club's greatest ever season. Captained by Kevin Ratcliffe, Everton won the league, the European Cup Winners' Cup, and also reached the FA Cup final.
And the Everton fans, 20,000 of them and more in the stadium in Rotterdam. A joyous night for them, and certainly their team has done British football proud as Kevin Ratcliffe raises the European Cup Winners' Cup.
They were simply unstoppable, and although the 1986 campaign ended in double disappointment, Everton were champions again 12 months later. The 1987 title success was more of a squad achievement than 1985, and that was testament to the ability of Kendall, who was subsequently tempted abroad to further his career. Colin Harvey took over, and though he did well, he fell short of the standards that had been set. So did Kendall when he came back for a second spell, and so did Mike Walker, who only survived in the Premiership after a dramatic win against Wimbledon on the last day of the 1993-94 season.
Stewart. Cotty came quickly to him. Stewart! Yes! Yes! For Everton! They can see salvation. Stewart. It's over. Everton have done all that they could do for themselves, and it looks as though it's enough.
Yet again, it was a former player who ignited anything like a revival. Joe Royle stemmed the tide and even won the FA Cup in 1995. It didn't last though, and a third Kendall reign almost ended in disaster, Everton engineering another 11th hour escape in 1998. Walter Smith duly arrived in the following summer, and although he brought some experienced characters on board such as Paul Gascoigne and David Ginola, his period of tenure was to end barren. So in March 2002, an ambitious young Scot called David Moyes took charge, and he's presided over a roller coaster few years. Fourth from bottom in 2004 was followed by Champions League qualification just a year later, and the transfer record has been smashed 3 times for James Beattie, Andrew Johnson, and in August 2007 for Ayegbeni Yakubu. And that brings us up to date. It's been an incredible story, and if you know your history,